The decision on the coalition, we've already heard some comments on this morning. The reality is that the party took the best decision at the time, and because we had the structure, the triple lock and so on in place, we could demonstrate that that was very much the settled, decided view across the whole of the party. What we have to do now as we go forward is to keep our nerve on those things. The first section of this motion talks about that agreement and goes back to the reasons we took it. The second part of the motion talks about our independence. I know of nobody in the party who has any disagreement whatever with what is said here. The reason it's important to say is that there are a few leading people in the Conservative Party, including John Major, who are making an opposite case. The third part of this motion deals with the party's strategy and the headlines there. I draw your attention not to the obvious things, such as the commitment to on elections, but also the commitment on diversity within the party and the recognition that liberalism is not simply the definition of one particular political party at one time. It's something much broader than that, and there are many issues, there are many challenges that we can take on where we can be involved with other people outside the ranks of our party as part of a broad coalition which is promoting the idea of liberalism. The bit which is thought to be most contentious, the fourth section of this, deals with distinctiveness and identity as a party. The problem is that we can't find anybody in the party who disagrees with it. So it's a little difficult to turn that commitment to our distinctive identity and to fighting our distinctive identity into any sort of argument at all, because it does represent very much the settled view of the party. I do want to emphasise, however, as the bedrock of our approach to these things, just the last references in this motion. References to history and geography. I spent yesterday in a meeting of the Bureau, the small managing bureau of the Liberal International, which draws together 110 Liberal parties around the world. We talked about the liberalism that, for instance, is represented by Alassane Ouattara in Côte d'Ivoire, the man whose election is being stolen from him by another of those African despots. We talked about how we are working with the Liberal Party of Canada as that party takes the next step from being an opposition party to returning to its natural role as a Liberal party of government. If you look at the historical sweep of liberalism, if you look today at the geographical sweep of liberalism throughout the world, what you see is a basis for well-justified self-confidence in a set of ideas, in a political philosophy, in a set of beliefs that are about liberalism. What we need to found our distinctiveness and independence as a party upon is the knowledge of that breadth, is the self-confidence that comes from being part of one of the great movements in the history of the world and throughout the world now. I talked a little time ago in a party conference about just one way of seeing that. There was a time in the 16th century when people began for the first time to travel on the open ocean. Before that, what they'd done is simply to steer by landmarks. They'd steered round a coast. What they began to do at that time was to steer by the stars, to realise that there were some unchanging, some definite, some clear points which would enable them in difficult times to know where they were and to have a clear course and know where they were going. It is the self-confidence that comes from that creed, from that belief, from that philosophy, which are our stars, which give us the opportunity to steer a course as a party which goes beyond dealing with the day-to-day questions of legislation, the day-to-day questions of election, and which takes us to those fundamental beliefs. The more we talk about those things, the more we understand those things, the greater will be the self-confidence with which we approach our mission and our purpose as a party. And the purpose of this motion and this proposal to you today and to our federal conference a week tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair. What I'd like to talk about, a lot of this motion really addresses the issue we're facing of how we distinguish ourselves from the Conservatives. I think there is a balance, and I think the balance is that we can sell the positive things that we are doing in the coalition, and the way we sell it is to link it very much into what's happening locally. So we write stories in our leaflets about what difference Liberal Democrat achievements in the coalition are making to local people in our area. Things about the localism bill, about planning, about scrapping ID cards, about the healthcare reforms, particularly with on dementia and mental illness and that sort of thing, where there's some very promising changes coming through. There are lots of good stories to tell, and the way we can tell them is the way we always tell good local stories, which is to write them in a way that interests local people, that makes it clear how they affect their lives, and we mix that in with the local stuff to get a good balance.
I was first elected over 30 years ago because I'm interested in local government, and I think that that is where really the heart and soul of this party lies. And while I'm very happy with the wording of the motion, its positioning stance of where we are as a party going into coalition, I don't think there's much dialogue going on in the party about what is happening with local education authorities and what is a London-centric view of what needs to be done with education. And I think that if we are to maintain that distinct identity, one of the things the party needs to do is to have much more dialogue with those of us who are actually delivering it on the ground.
But Gordon is absolutely right. We have got to retain our own cohesive identity as a party. That's what the country needs, it's what we need. So for goodness sake, keep that cohesion together. And I think it is vital, as so many have said in this brief debate, that national parties live and exist and should learn from what happens in local government elections.